All right. Good evening. We'll call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7 o'clock. Let's see, I believe we have, well, hello, there's our principal.
How are you this evening? This evening, I would like to introduce Mr. Matthew Nace. Matthew has been a member of our welcoming committee at Wildwood, our Caring Counts Club, our Builders Club, and our school band. He has been a consistent role model for our entire student body. One of the remarkable things is that he's maintained a 4.0, and this summer he will be attending the Governor's School for Math and Science. We are very proud to introduce Mr. Matthew Nace as our pledge leader for your board meeting this evening.
Matthew.
Everyone, please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Thank you. I have the pleasure of knowing Matthew. I know he's an outstanding student. It's great to see you. And where are you going to the academy? Is this the one at West Virginia University? That's fantastic. Great. Well, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Superintendent's comments.
No, sir. The agenda speaks for itself.
I'm not sure I'm going to know how to run this meeting. Approval of the minutes of the last regularly scheduled board meeting on April 25th. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, clarifications? If not, all in order? All in favor? Signify. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Any citizens' comments? Consent agenda.
Yes, sir. We have one change on the consent agenda, number 4. Mr. Grove, from the time we initially published the agenda until the time of the board meeting, he had originally posted into one position and in that brief period of time has now transferred into another as our service system allows him to do so. That's the single change.
Do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions? Lori, did you have a question here?
Yes, I had asked about the professional education interpreter and just what that position replaced or how that worked, or is it this position we had currently?
Currently, that position is filled by contracted services, and we were able to procure an actual employee who is licensed to provide that service, which will be at both cost savings to us and stability for our students. Ms. Fitzwater worked very, very hard, not only procuring that employee, but making sure that we were able to leave our previous contract without financial penalty, and she did a great deal of work with our attorney to ensure that, so a great deal of thanks to her. I think both our students and our checkbook will be vastly improved by that change, so thank you.
And what is that? Is that literally an interpreter?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Who is licensed under West Virginia law to provide, certainly while someone has to have an interpreter's license, educational interpretation also requires a certain degree of the instructional vocabulary so that they are able to interpret academic content in terms of terminology and things. So. But that's the terminology utilized by West Virginia.
Other questions regarding the consent agenda? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. No unfinished business. New business. Summer school program.
Mr. Blanc will be presenting on the summer school program.
This is part of our early literacy grant that Dr. Hetzel's been coordinating. First year we're having this program that have a going to be at North Jefferson from July 5th to July 28th, 4 days a week from 9 to 12, and going to serve a total of 80 students each week. And all 10 elementary schools will be having students that will be participating in that. So in other words, there'll be 80 students. They'll be replaced by a new set of 80 students each succeeding week in July. There'll be a total of 320 students that will be served. Each of the schools were asked to identify 32 students that would benefit from a fun week focused on literacy and the value of early literacy. They'll be doing reading, writing activities, library access, and also trying to encourage the parents to incorporate reading with their children at home as well. The grant, it's funded by a grant, the whole early literacy grant that the state's provided, and the children will also be taking a backpack home of a book and literacy-related types of activities. Food service will be provided for the students through our county food program, which will be we call it a feeding site, I suppose. That will be open to the public, as we've seen those of some of our other schools in the past. North Jefferson will have that program where school-age children will be able to come in and have a meal there as well. Parents will provide transportation to North Jefferson, and say breakfast and lunch both will be served. So we're kind of excited about it, trying to once again incorporate reading not just at the school and in the home, but trying to get it into the family as well.
Thank you. We have a motion
So moved.
and a second.
Second.
Thank you. Questions? How many students again did you say?
320 students from K to 12 in the 4-week period. Have 320 students that have been identified. And
You said K to 12?
I'm K to 2. I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
K to
Early
2.
literacy K to 2. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And 3 separate, so I thought I heard 80 and now I hear 320.
Yeah, a total of 320 students throughout the whole program. So it'll be
sessions.
so it'll be 80 students.
Gotcha.
80 each week, 4 weeks.
Gotcha.
Right. So like I say, a lot of it is coming to taking books home, because obviously you're not going to, for the week they're coming in, but it's what they're taking home also, trying to reinforce the literacy at home, so they'll want to go home, and also having the parents to carry on some literacy activities at home also.
And what does the grant cover? It covers the cost of providing
The books
The
and the
instruction.
teachers. It provides for all the materials and the teacher salaries. It's pretty comprehensive grant.
and what about the food?
That's through our food service program, so I think that's more of a federally funded type of program.
It's still free. And
It is.
It's a funded purpose for us.
Along with your question, so if we have about 80 students, we have them identified, but do we know if there's any hindrances for some of those students for transportation, or have many of them committed, or what are their thoughts on how many we can actually attract, if you will?
I'm not sure. Like I say, I think part of the recommendation process was trying to find students that would be able to have transportation to the site, to try to ensure that they will have the population there. Is that what you're asking? If we?
Yeah. Do we have something that we can provide, or how limiting is that going to be for us, for the kids who really need that program, that either parents work or there's no way that they're going to be able to get there?
And I'll have to follow up and get back to you on that. But like I said, I think the idea was to identify students, recommend students that would have commitment from their parents to bring them.
Okay.
Yeah, so how do we identify? So in addition, I mean, what are the, are we looking for, is it a certain population of students who we believe need extra assistance, or is it for whomever can provide transportation?
No,
how do we identify them?
the goal is to identify students that are going to benefit from the program most, that could use, as you said, extra assistance. That's why we worked with the teachers of those students and asked them to identify students who they thought would most benefit from the program. And so those are students that don't have the literacy things going on at home as much.
Maybe it would be to Ms. Ogden's point, it'd be interesting to see what is that universe of students who've been identified versus the universe who've said they're coming. And what's the impediment? If there's a difference in that group, is transportation an impediment to the others coming? And if so, is there some way to address that? I mean, there might not be, but I sure want to know if the universe of students who we believe who could really benefit from this program is substantially impacted by their ability to get there.
Well, I'm just thinking long-term. I mean, if a goal for us long-term as we move forward is to really try to make this a tangible goal that we want to raise our reading, everybody reads by grade 3. So if that's a goal, this is, I feel like, a great opportunity of free money, if you will, to have some very specific set goals as we move forward that we want to see X, Y, or Z from this literacy program. The kids are very specifically identified so that we would know, hey, if we see some amazing scores here with this group of students, or we've had a hindrance with this because we've needed transportation, but this would be something where we see we had such a great feedback and response from this, that this is something we should look to put our own money towards if we can't get a grant, because this clearly makes a difference in our reading scores. So that's my only concern, is I really hope that we make some very clear, concise goals, and we have measurable goals that we can actually go back and look at, that with this money we looked at blank, blank, and blank, and we can clearly see, and we limited the variables enough that we are going to get some kind of data from it.
Right, and we'll have to
move
follow up on
forward.
the students' performance too, to see how they are doing academically
Right.
as well.
Although I would certainly caution that with a one-week program, the focus of this
Exactly.
has a great deal more to do with involving families in the process of literacy than it does bolstering scores. There will certainly be a screener. I believe that they're using the STAR early literacy scores as a cut score screener to determine who's in that initial universe, and then they follow up with teachers whose expertise in the classroom. They've seen whether or not those scores are indicative of a child's ability, and they've worked with them long term. So to your point, do we have 800 of those students and only 320 slots, and then we see how effective this is? But this is, I just want to caution that this is not a targeted intervention program.
Gotcha.
It is not created nor intended to look at, when I look at your early literacy, I denote that this group of children have decoding issues, and then we're going to take this very specific program and apply it to this. It is more of a literacy camp. I want to do fun, engaging things with you so that you see reading as an enjoyable activity. And I also want to bring your parents in and give them materials and give them training and make them comfortable so that they want to engage in literacy activities with you in the home. So the focus is much broader. I would be hard-pressed to think that you're going to see huge gains. So once again, I think it's really important for you, if you're looking at data, to know what your baseline is, know what your intervention is, and know what your measurement is on the back end. But to your point, we'll get some more information from Dr. Hetzel and come back with that.
Or maybe even it's as simple as a survey in the very beginning that parents take on how involved they are with their child as far as reading and this, that, and the other. And then maybe those same parents in 6 months get that survey again as a voluntary thing, but if they choose to fill it out, to see if there's any trend data whatsoever that did it help to get parents more involved. And if it did, then maybe we even look at these types of literacy programs during the year somehow, or just something that, hey, that's something we can look at in the future. So
Yes, ma'am.
that makes sense, so thank you, I appreciate it.
I have a logistical question that is kind of micro looking at it, but when they're doing 10 different schools, are they doing like 2 kids from each school during a week, or are they doing, 2 schools at a time during a week? Because if they're doing, let's say, T.A. Lowry and North Jefferson at the same time, is it possible to move this camp around so that we have it at North Jefferson 1 week for those kids that are close there, we have it at South Jefferson 1 week for those kids that are close there, have it up at Blue Ridge?
It'd be difficult with the feeding program.
Only
Is that-
the feed program
Oh.
is tied to specific schools. Whether or not you can
Okay.
feed children during the summer to school is tied to that school's poverty rate during the school year, not to the kids who actually come to the program. So there are particular schools that are certified, because we ran into this issue with attempting to have a program at Driftwood, which is a perfect central location, very accessible, and we could not feed them unless, so all of a sudden it cuts into your budget tremendously, because then you can't use the summer feed program to feed the kids there. You have to put food into your budget, and that's a lot less teacher hours, a lot less books you can provide.
Right. Now, I was just wondering if it was something that we brought it closer to the kids that would be more accessible to them, but that makes it hard.
But still, we could in the future, and like anything else, this is the first time that we're doing this. So live and learn. If we do it and it's very popular and we get a lot of kids, then maybe next year we plot out the summer feed sites and we have an east, a west, and a central for Jefferson and move them around based on weeks. That would require just more, I think, logistical forethought than, oh my goodness, we're getting this grant, that's fantastic, now we got to put it together for 320 kids. So, but that's a great point. That's a great point.
Well, thank you to Ms. Hetzel and whoever else worked on that to get that.
Ms. Hetzel's been, she's had the help of 4 teachers, and but she's been spearheading it for sure.
That's great.
Other questions? If not, the question is on approving this summer literacy program for K through 2 at North Jefferson Elementary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Item B.
Yes, sir. Ms. Fitzwater will be giving a presentation on, I believe that she has some materials.
Yes.
I handout for
I
you.
know which one's first, I have the agenda.
You have the pay equity for, or
This one first. I got mine.
stipend equity.
For
Yeah.
nurses, counselors, and psychologists.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Sure. Just as much as I am trying to save you money, I guess I'm here to kind of today to, I guess, talk about my staff. And I have some wonderful staff members, and I've invited a lovely staff member, one of my psychologists, who is Dr. Taylor, who you're probably familiar with, in that they do get, she has gone and she has gotten her, I can't even think anymore, I'm sorry, her national board certification. And maybe you could tell me what that entails. Can you share with that, what that entails,
Sure.
what you did to get that?
Yeah. First of all, I was studying in Switzerland at the time that it was actually started, the board certification for the National Board for Psychologists. So I had to go to Ramstein Air Force Base, this was late 80s, and take the test. That was quite an experience by itself. So I was one of the first to take the test. And then every 3 years, one must pursue further training. And I've always done that at my own expense. And it's been exciting, especially the last 10 years because of the brain research. And I focused on that quite extensively. It's been exciting to follow that. It's phenomenally exploding field, so really focusing on, one must have 75 hours continuing education every 3 years to maintain that certification. So, is that anything else you want to know? I'll be glad to try to answer.
Thank you.
So basically, the state of West Virginia, in order to have staff that are, encourage folks to get national standard certifications. They currently have a set of professional national standards that they recognize. If you get national board certification, the state of Virginia will provide you with a certain, state of West Virginia will provide you with a certain stipend to be able to recognize that and to encourage you to keep that up. Currently off of that list, and you have that there in front of you, which includes teachers, psychologists, nurses, counselors, and speech pathologists, we match the state's stipend for teachers only. We do not match locally for any of the other professions that also go through that same certification process and maintain that standard. In researching the surrounding counties, Berkeley provides that local match for every one of the professions, the different job categories that meets that standard, and they actually go above what the state's is. They provide $3,000 for years 1 through 5 and $5,000 for years 5 through 10 for individuals that will maintain their board certification. You go further than that into Morgan, and they do not match for anyone, teachers or additional staff. They simply do not have the funding to do so. But Ms. Fitzwater's proposal is based on the fact that we are working to have our staff pursue national credentials so that there are comparative benchmarks for the quality of staff, and so that there is a requirement that they continue to work in their field to national standards. And once again, all of these individuals do get a stipend from the state. It's whether or not we want to have an equitable local match for the job categories outside of teacher.
So move.
And a second?
And Ms. Fitzwater does also have some information about how many of our staff currently meet those criteria.
And we'll get to that. We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Questions?
Bill, why don't we get to
Information.
Yeah. Okay.
Currently, we have 2 psychologists, 2 nurses, and 2 counselors who have pursued their national board certification on their own and kept it, as she's kept it for many, many years. There is the possibility, I guess, to be upfront with you of exactly how many people we have. So total right now, we have 5 psychologists, we have 14 nurses, we have 21 and a half counselors, and we have 3 speech pathologists. We do have SLPAs, but speech pathologists that are possible to go and get this. So I wanted to make sure you knew that and you're aware of that. I don't think 20 of them are going to run out and do this today, but you know what I mean?
It'd be great if they did.
It would be
better.
wonderful.
Yeah, it'd be great for them and for us. So
It would be wonderful for our kids.
happy to
so.
incentivize.
It's not easy.
No, I'm
It's
sure
not.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
They work
Yeah.
very hard. They
That's
really
a lot
do.
of hours to keep up with over 3 years. too.
And then do it again.
So, I'm sorry, would you tell us again how many
We
we
current-
have currently?
2. We have 2 psychologists, 2 nurses, and 2 counselors that are nationally board certified. So 6 total.
So 6.
Mm-hmm.
And
15,000.
how many do we have that are currently qualified teachers? Do you know?
I know I have 87 special ed teachers. I apologize for our whole county. Do you have?
You're asking how many highly qualified teachers? How many?
Highly-
standard?
Yeah.
I think we have between 10 and 20, I'm guessing.
I thought it was somewhere along, but I wasn't sure if I was
Yes,
correct or not.
not a real high amount.
It is a pretty arduous process in terms of presentation and field of study and defense.
Very much so.
First of all, we're doing this for 2 groups at this time, and I see no reason that we don't extend this to these other groups. And I think we always need to encourage people to be lifelong learners, and this establishes this in a extremely great area. I have personally worked with Dr. Taylor, and her expertise is astounding, and I think part of that she has gotten from programs like this, and I see no reason we don't extend this.
Other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, and thank you very much for bringing this to our attention. This is an important step for our professionals and our students. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I believe the next one's yours.
Yes. Okay. Yes, this is for an aide, an additional aide at North Jefferson in our behavioral disorder room. They are currently, I believe I gave an attachment to kind of give you an overview of what the children are like. According to our policy, it should be up to 8 children, and then we would have to get an additional aide. We are at 7, and we have been having to put a little bit of extra help in this room. We have a few runners, as into the street, and where North Jefferson is, and I'm trying to be a little more proactive and asking and requesting that I can post for an additional aide. What am I missing here?
So to place in there or to hold the position open until you place additional students in there to exceed the limit?
I would like to place in there. At the moment, we have had, I think, some extreme cases that we have not had in our county prior for behavioral and emotional disturbance, to where it has caused a few more issues that we have. May I talk about what we've done?
We had a board-certified behavioral analyst come from Grafton and do an observation of the class. We had a number of incidents with students there who had either injured themselves or injured others, and we monitor the rates at which we have behavioral incidents at each one of the schools, and they were far exceeding the norms for the county and even for our self-contained programs. And so we've met with the teaching staff, we've met with the administrative staff, and the mental health issues that they are dealing with, they were able to convey that the level of training that we had provided them, they felt like they understood what was necessary, but that they needed additional support to be able to do that. So we went to Grafton, and a board-certified behavioral analyst is the highest credentialing you can get in the area of behavior. So their licensed BCBA, who also happens to have a doctorate, came in and did an observation for an entire week at the class, morning, afternoon, different times, different personnel, and then did a follow-up written report to us, which we shared with the administration and with the teaching and paraprofessional aid staff in that room. And several of their recommendations in terms of student safety and student programming, the staff were unable to manage independently. And so Ms. Fitzwater has had to pull special education staff from other locations off of their regular jobs to come into that location and to help support them to the tune of 20 and 30 hours a week over the last month. And we simply can't sustain that drain on our resources from other areas to be able to manage that class. So hence the request for an aide. We are one student below the limit that would require us to add another aide, and there wouldn't be a choice. But the students who are in there have some rather significant aggressive behavioral issues that we're dealing with. We have purchased additional equipment, as I believe that we've conveyed to you previously, that we're working with the Ukaru system, which is a non-violent behavioral system that allows individuals to attempt to control student behavior without physically touching them. We've bought all the padding for those. We've put all the staff through the training. We've made that investment. But there continues to need to be a good deal of additional support there.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve one full-time aide for North Jefferson?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any further or any questions?
Go ahead.
Please.
If we hire this position and then next school year you only have 3 children in this class, what happens to that position? I mean, is this a position that we could hire from now to the end of the year and then adjust next year if we need to?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And certainly that position can, based on the criteria under West Virginia Code, if there are unanticipated changes in student population, we are allowed to transfer folks who weren't initially on the transfer list before the February date. And that would include this position.
And would there be a place to transfer this person to that you would anticipate?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, I would. Although, to your point, I think that it would be best if we would advertise it as a position through the end of this year, and then to look at our student population, although I will convey it is a burgeoning area for us. We could certainly, if we could have far more students in that class based on our criteria and the level of supports that we offer. There are schools that are struggling to maintain their student population, particularly young students with mental health needs or behavioral needs that they feel ill-equipped to support.
Have you given any thoughts of how we could handle this next year any differently? Or are we probably on the same plan if we have the same amount of students?
We do, and actually, I think with discussion and looking at our numbers, this is almost coming to where we are getting to a point where we have a behavioral issue almost in every elementary school. And looking at that and speaking with principals from Shepherdstown to South Jefferson, we are dealing with these issues in every school. We are doing training in every school. We have taken steps to hire and get nurses trained in behavioral to hopefully increase that. Would I like to see a behavioral class eventually, or an almost emotionally disturbed, okay, don't get me going here, sorry. To look at getting a additional staff working at, can I talk about this? I guess I can.
Well, and I think probably what Ms. Fitzwater is struggling with is there's an intersection of students who, special education services aside, we are simply dealing with students who, because of domestic issues, because of addiction issues in the home, because of poverty issues and their needs not being met, are outside of the realm of experience of some of our teachers. And we are having a lot of discussion with our administrative staff in the buildings, because previously those numbers were so small and it was such a very narrow population that the answer to that, when you weren't able to deal with it, was to remove those children and to place them in another location. And we simply don't have the capacity to continue to do that. There's not a large enough alternative program to send all of those away. So part of what we're doing is working on building the capacity of the staff within the schools. We've jumped onto a grant that Berkeley County got called Project Aware, where we're training our counseling and nursing staff on mental health first aid. We are also, and we'll be doing a presentation probably next month on mental health screening for middle school students. We would eventually love to see a behaviorally trained team in every single one of our schools to support students up to a certain level with preventative services. We will likely have to do both a combination of that and expanding some of our alternative programs. The population of students who struggle with the difference between the behavioral expectations and norms in their home and the behavioral expectations and norms in school is simply outpacing our staff's, our old models' ability to handle it. And so we're trying a two-pronged approach of raising the capacity of staff in the building, which is going to have its own issues, and raising our capacity for programs to move students into, which is always just going to have a certain set of limitations just in terms of building and people and training. But that's the crux.
And there's a fine line, because we owe those children an education, and we owe them to try to change their behaviors. But we also owe those other children that they're disrupting in education as well. So it's a fine line we're walking.
You understand that all too well, Mr. Osborne. Yes, you do. And it's not just us. It's
it's everybody.
National issue with schools who are working to make that change, and not just within schools. We're a reflection of a culture that has shifted, and Some places have dealt with it well, and some places have dealt with it badly, and we're trying to build a good foundation to have a continuum of services, and it simply takes time and commitment and resources. In terms of mental health counselors, and Morgan County has a full-time licensed mental health counselor on staff at a time when they've cut teachers left and right. It is a modern need to have licensed clinical social workers and mental health staff, regardless of your position about whether or not it is a parent's responsibility, your own personal belief system about parental responsibility versus school responsibility. They're still here. They still show up every day, and we have to meet their needs. So that's been quite a shift.
There's a lot of legal liability that attends all of this, too. You have to keep that in mind.
Yes, sir. In terms of student safety and support, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. And the parents' expectations, too.
Yes, sir.
Other questions or comments?
Ms. Fitzwater has been very critical when she asks for
Yeah.
help. I'm sure she needs it.
Yes, you're right, she has.
I have consulted with this lovely woman over here about the clinical social worker. She's over here smiling, going, yes, And we have talked in depth about her knowledge and everything and what we see in the schools as well. So I do access everybody I do have, and I guess that's why I came up here and I fought for them too, that I want to keep them. We have a great bunch of staff, and we do see the need. And I have talked to them, and we have talked about possibilities of growing our own BCBAs, because that's how I feel we're heading. And to have our own would give us an advantage as well to help our own staff.
Question is on the approval of one full-time aide for North Jefferson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Ms. Fitzwater, thank you. We've, since you've come into this position, these issues have received a lot more attention, and we've learned a lot as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, any other new business tonight?
No, sir.
I see we've a possible executive session regarding a student issue.
Yes, sir. We have a discipline.
Do we expect any action to be taken?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay, so we will entertain a motion to enter an executive session for purposes of a student disciplinary matter. We would return to public session to take any action. Any other, before we entertain a motion for executive, any other questions or comments from the board?
I just had two real quick. Number one, had an update from a parent who's receiving the online speech services. And I had a parent come up to me and tell me that their child was doing that, and they were, I don't remember where they were, in some office somewhere. They were in some place with the child, and the child read a word off the wall that before would not have happened, and was the parent was just explaining how he was able to really just his phonetic awareness and all these different things that he's getting, he's not had any experience with before. And she was just crying. And she said, I know this may not work for every child, but this is the best thing that's ever happened to my child. So, it's nice to hear when you input something that you're trying to include with services and whatnot, and how well that works. It's nice to get some feedback on it. So, yeah, so that was one thing. And then, speaking about students and trying to make their needs and whatever, just as a whole, for me, the summer school schedule for special education students, at some point it would be my desire that we can provide in some way more than what we provide. Having had a child with special needs, the program that he had was so much more extensive, and I know it all costs money. I don't know where we're ever going to get it from, but personally, just to have 3 days a week times 3 weeks or whatever it is, the minimal that we can even provide, I just think is, for a child to get in there, they're just going to get comfortable and they're done and they go home. You know, I mean, it's just, and it's not anyone's fault per se, I'm just saying long-term, I would just really hope that we might look at being able to provide more. So.
In this executive session, I would also like to discuss the possibility of land purchase as well.
Okay, great. Other questions or comments? If not, entertain a motion to enter executive session for purposes of student disciplinary matter and possible land acquisition. We have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We'll take we'll return at 7:45.